Now on page 10 of 21, this is part 2 of the ipart creation. We're going to look at the intake valve block. So notice that there's a starred note that says exhaust valve block is identical except the 4 holes that are tapped 256 through that allow the screw to mate and hold the whole assembly together. Alright, so most all this stuff is going to be the same from intake to exhaust. I'm going to go ahead and go back to 3D model, and I'm going to type H for hole, and I'm going to select these 4 again. I'm not holding down control. I only do that when I deselect. And on this one, in the intake, these are countersunk. So we see that that is 0.172 at the face, and its pilot hole is 089, and it goes through all. So I'm going to go ahead and say apply, because I have another hole that I want to put in here that's at this center, and this one is going to be from the other side though. So what do I have to do now? Huh? I don't think I can do it. It actually, your sketch has to be on the face where your counterbore is. So let's cancel that, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off, and now I'm going to flip it to the other side, holding down shift and rotating around. So let's go ahead and let's turn this back on. Let's see if I can project that sketch onto this sketch. So I'm going to create a sketch here, and note, oh wait a minute, I've got my origin there, so I don't even need that sketch. Does that make sense? Shoot, just put a point right there and move on. Smart. Okay, didn't know it. Let's put a hole in there, and that hole is going to be a counterbore. What's the difference in a spot face and a counterbore? Let's look at the distance of the hole. With a spot face, from the spot face down is how deep the hole is. Let's go to a counterbore. From a counterbore, the depth of the hole comes all the way from the top. So be real careful when you're doing this in software. Go and make sure that you put a depth on the hole and check where it's coming from. Okay, so I'm going to go from counterbore because that's where we're dimensioning from here. We're going to go 31 thousandths here, and we're going to go a major diameter of 0.375, and that's going to be a 0.313 right here. And we can go through all. I just wanted to show you guys that. Select that one, say OK. And now there's one more thing that we're going to put in, and there's going to be a hole here, and this part can be turned either direction. So on the intake it can come in one side and the exhaust pipe can come out the other. So, but I'm just going to put a hole here, and it is a linear hole, so I'm going to select that and say H on this face, linear from this face. It's going to be just a regular hole. This one is going to go how deep? If you look at it, it says 0.188 deep. So 0.188. Now what this is doing is this is putting, yes. So now we're going to make that 188, and the diameter of that hole is 0.219. And we'll go OK. And I didn't put any dimensions on there, did I? I'm going to edit the feature. I need my 2 references. This one, let's say that is 0.125, and this one 0.313, and say OK. Now if we wanted to make sure that this stayed in the center of the part no matter what, we would have had to put a sketch on there. Unless we put a parameter on this part and said whatever this parameter is divided by 2. Alright, in case that moved or changed. Okay, so we've got this part. Let's go ahead and make these holes. So let's say intake matching. Let's say Let's call this the valve guide. And let's say this is a port. This is a port for, I'm just calling it a port hole essentially for the carburetor or the exhaust. Alright? Okay, so let's go back to our table, and I'm going to edit the table. If I go back here, I'm going to add some more features for suppression. Okay, intake matching. Are we going to allow that one and disallow it on another configuration? Yeah, we're going to put that one in there. And this one's going to be compute here, suppress here, right? So let's do this as we go. And exhaust is going to be suppressed because that needs to be threaded holes. Does that make sense? Alright, valve guide. Is that the same on the intake and exhaust? It is. But we're not going to use it on the middle. So I'm going to say suppress on this one and compute on the other two. Does that make sense? Alright, the last one is the port. We don't have this one in the middle, but we will use it in the other two. So I'm going to add that, and I'm going to suppress it in this one. And let's verify that and say OK. So now I'm in intake. If I go back to middle, there's middle, double click on intake, and there's intake. Alright, now I'm going to exhaust right now. Notice that I'm actually going into each one of these configurations as I'm adding new features. I'm allowing everything else to be suppressed. Here's why. I can't put a hole on top of a hole. It will not let me. So if I'm in middle and I've got those through holes, those 4 through holes, and I try and put countersink holes right on top of them, it won't let me do it. It says you're cutting into empty space there. So you want to go in, you want to make your first one and suppress everything and create these other two. And then as you come into a clean part here, you're going to make your other features. And then you're going to go and add those two. And now I'm going to go into this one. It's a clean feature. Now I'm going to add my last features in here, which are my number 256 threaded holes through this one. So I'm going to make H for a hole, and I'm going to select these 4 points. They're going to be threaded, and I'm going to come down here to the size, and I'm going to go to a number 2. That's a 256. They're all going to be right hand threads. So I'm going to say OK, and now this part is done. Does that make sense to you guys? Now I'm going to turn off visibility of this, and I'm going to save this as, let me get to.
So you don't have to suppress it in the other?
Oh yes, I do. You're right. Let me go in and make, I hate to call this anything else. Let's call this very good. Did make that the active project. I don't know why it's doing that, but let's look. So now if I go back here, if I go to intake, I didn't suppress these holes, and it's having a problem with it. See that? So you're exactly right. Let's go and let's name this one. Let's go back to exhaust where it's not mad at me, and let's name this one. Let's call this I'm going to call this exhaust matching, since those 3 kind of have the same nomenclature. And I'm going to go back to table, suppression, exhaust matching. I'm going to allow it, and I'm going to suppress it in these two. Sorry.